What's up guys, TechLab here. Now in today's video we're going to be taking a look at another super budget system that I managed to pick up. I paid just £35 for this and it was advertised as a gaming PC. But what do you actually get for £35 nowadays, particularly in a full system like this? And can we actually game on it? Well, today that's what we're going to find out. Now, as we've proven in previous videos, you don't really get a lot for your money when you only spend 25 or 35 pounds for a system. But I think today we managed to get one that's pretty decent. This system was actually listed or half listed as a reasonably decent spec, but for the graphics card, it did just have Radeon listed. So I'm not 100% sure what graphics card it does have in it. I do believe this case is the Corsair 270R, something like that, but it doesn't have a glass panel, which starts to make me think that this was probably a pre-built system at some point. The case itself was pretty dirty when we got it. There's a few age-related marks, but a quick wipe over and a clean up, it came out really nice. It's definitely something that you can now keep on your desk and it would look pretty good as well. Opening it up though, we can see that the parts inside of this are not the highest of specs, of course, and that really does lead me on to think it was a bit of a pre-built system at some point. For the motherboard, it is a very basic H110, which of course is a 6th and 7th generation board. The CPU in here is supposed to be the i5-6500. It is a little bit old now, but it is a 4-core full-thread processor that should be able to reasonably cope nowadays. And then for the RAM, we've got a single stick of 8GB of DDR4. It is the Corsair value RAM as well. The power supply is a Corsair VS450, which of course does have some PCI connections, but it is the bare minimum really. So all in all, I do think that this was a pre-built system at some point. It even smells like a pre-built system, which sounds weird, but I've had pre-builts before, particularly from scan.co.uk, which smell like a very weird perfumey smell, and this one definitely has it, so I'm suspecting it's probably from there too. Back in the day, somebody probably paid a hefty little penny for this machine, because even though it is very basic stuff, of course they're not cheap, and the graphics card does seem a little bit out of place. So what I'm suspecting is that somebody bought a pre-built system and then of course added the graphics card in afterwards, even though it is just as dirty as the rest of the system. There is quite a lot of dust in here, but obviously dust can be cleaned, so as long as the parts work perfectly fine, it should be good to go. And for the graphics card, of course, you can see here it does say Devil on the side, so it is a red Devil card from Power Color. And reading on the top here, it is an R9 270X. Now, I don't know a lot about the R9 270X cards, apart from what you guys have said in a previous video where we took a look at a HD 7870, that they're very similar in terms of performance. Maybe this one was the replacement for it. So I'm not going to expect amazing results out of this. We do know what the HD 7870 can actually do, but hopefully the pairing with this graphics card and the CPU, as long as it all works, will actually make for a reasonably good entry-level system. Maybe something that will play old games in 1080p, and maybe some people are actually quite happy with that. There is of course no M.2 slot on this motherboard, so it's going to be a SATA drive, which I do believe is in the back here. It is again going to be a very basic drive, but I believe it is a 250GB SATA SSD, or at least that is what the listing said. And there's also something really unique about the back of this case, because if I just turn it around here, you will see that the cable management is actually fantastic. Another sign here of a good pre-built system, because somebody has clearly spent the effort in putting everything together and pinning it all down. All of the cables coming from the front I/O, which is in the front here, come down, they're all pinned together, and then they kind of branch off to exactly where they need to go. There's no extra lengths here. There's a big bundle underneath for the power supply of things that you're not going to use, but of course the SSD is just mounted up here, and again it's got some nice little cable management going in. A few of these little sticky pads that somebody's included, which pre-built does generally do include, so that again really says this to me. I've come away, but generally everything is pinned up really nicely. And that is one of the reasons why I probably won't clean this for a while, because I don't want to take all that apart. I think it looks very nice the way it is. This system also comes with multiple other locations where you can install the SSDs and hard drives. Of course, we've got this extra bay here for another SSD. And then we've got these two bays here where we can fit either SSDs or 3.5-inch hard drives, and they've still got all the little rubber connections in there and thumb screws and stuff like that. So it is a pretty decent system in terms of what you actually get in cases and things like that. You can fit some really good stuff in it. And even though there is not that much airflow on the front here, it's very kind of locked off. Basically, you just get a nice little airflow on the side there. It does come with lots of airflow on the top, so we can pretty much fit on there up to a 280mm all-in-one cooler, and the system would be pretty nice. It would take it fine. Not sure whether that would actually hit the motherboard here because it is quite high, but If we do upgrade the cooling in this, maybe we'll see. Now, even though the case is pretty big and you can get reasonably decent airflow in this, there is no extra fans really installed. There is one in the back here, which is a 120mm Corsair fan again, but they've not included anything in the front and they've not included anything in the top. So again, that really suggests to me that this graphics card was never installed in the first place. It was probably a very basic office type system and somebody bought it, dropped the graphics card in and turned it into a gaming PC. This graphics card to me actually looks quite fancy. I do like the power color cards, and Red Devils in particular are very nice. If I just take it out though, we can take a look at definitely which model it actually is. Now, like I say, I don't know much about this graphics card, but it does look like a very nice looking model. We have a triple fan configuration here, two little small fans with a big fan in the middle. A nice little Red Devil accents off of here. It's reasonably long, although the card is quite compact. I tend to find that AMD cards are pretty compact. It does come with a backplate in, I believe that is aluminium. It does feel like it, and it does have a lot of marking on it. It's not the cleanest graphics card. I'm not sure what all these marks are from, to be honest. They look like white marks, so maybe there was an all-in-one cooler on top of this at some point and it leaked off. It kind of doesn't really rub off. At some point we'll probably clean this up. There is no little sticker on these screws here, so somebody's definitely had it apart at some point, but it's a nice looking card. It could definitely do with a bit of a clean up, and I'm sure at some point we will probably go into more depth on this card as long as it survives and it works in this system, and we'll really see what it can do. But overall, being paired with the i5 6500, we should be able to get some kind of games to play. So let's go hook it up onto our test bench and we'll see if we can play any games. Okay, so we've got the system all hooked up and everything seems to be working, but I do have a feeling here that it's going to produce a lot of noise. Even in Windows alone, I can hear a slight ticking on that stock cooler there. So it's probably been worn out over the years and it's probably not going to cool that efficiently either. I haven't actually touched the system at all, so I haven't changed any thermal pastes. I haven't cleaned anything. That's going to be for a different day. So we're just going to see what kind of performance we get out of it as stock, as most people probably would just buy a system like this. The graphics card itself is also making a little bit of noise when the system booted up and those fans went, so expect quite a bit of noise from this system. Hopefully you guys can't hear it as we go along, but I will let you know if it does it. And just to help with this, I've disconnected the rear fan. It does work. It did go round and round. It was very slow, so maybe that's worn out too. I don't know, but overall, with the side up, it should be okay temperature wise. It should be able to draw enough kind of air from the room, and it's not that hot in here today, so it should be perfectly fine. But we've got some games installed, Windows reinstalled, and everything seemed to be quite happy. It installed pretty quick, so it's a good job that it's got an SSD. The last one we had a hard drive in it, which was absolutely terrible to use, and it took hours to install Windows on that one. This one took a few minutes, just like normal, so everything is looking good to go. We're going to start this system out today with a game that is reasonably old now, and it should be able to play perfectly fine, but as everybody is into the Warhammer thing, we're going to be just trying to get it to play Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 1. Number 2 actually came out this year, so it was a good 13-year gap, and I wouldn't really want to try and use the system on the new game because it's much more demanding and it looks really nice. I haven't actually managed to play the new game yet because I've been replaying through number 1, so this gives me a great opportunity to compare to a much bigger system. But let's crack into the game and see what kind of performance we get. So now that the game is loaded up, we can definitely hear that this machine is starting to get noisy. Things are starting to increase. The graphics card's not really been doing much, to be honest, so it's definitely this cooler here. It is making a bit of a spinny noise and it's ticking quite bad now. We'll see how bad that actually gets, but there is a little bit of coil whine coming from this system as well. I'm not quite sure if that is the graphics card or whether it's the power supply. I'm sure we'll find that out as we go in as well, because as soon as that graphics card gets put under load, we'll definitely see whether there is anything there. But so far in the menu, the stats are looking pretty good. We're currently getting an average of around 200 frames per second, so it should be no issue at all to play this. But before we jump into the game, because I know that for this game it's difficult to change the options once you're in there, I don't think it gives you access to things like the resolution and stuff. We'll go in and check what it's actually configured to beforehand. We'll pop over to the video options here. We are currently running in 1080p and we're going to keep all of the testing to 1080p, or hopefully we won't have to lower it for the games that we're going to test today, but some of them are going to be quite demanding on a system like this, so maybe we will have to. It's currently running in what is generally high settings because there's no real overall configuration here. You've just got access to things like shadows and visual FX details and stuff like that. So we'll consider this as a 1080p high experience and we'll jump into game and see what kind of performance we get. Now I am continuing this game from exactly where my current save file is. I can't remember what I was doing though. It looks like we're pretty far into the game at the moment and everything seems to be running pretty sweet. Here's, we've got some enemies here, we'll take them out. So we're currently running at an average of 142 frames per second with a 1% low of 112. I'm trying to read the stats here while also trying to shoot these bad guys. Means that the game is completely playable. We have a 0.1% low, 50 FPS, which means it's still going to be pretty smooth and everything is running beautifully. You could definitely play this game on a system like this, and the graphics card seems to be coping quite well. At the moment in this game, the graphics card and the CPU seem to be quite well balanced, although that graphics card's only really just reaching the high 90s now in terms of utilization, so maybe the CPU is holding it back just a little bit, but we'll grab some grenades here. We'll see what else we can grab. We've got some ammo. We've got more enemies on the way. We'll take them out. So far, everything is running smoothly and brilliantly fine. I could play this all the way through on this system, although it is starting to get a little bit noisy now. You can actually definitely tell that the graphics card is really spinning up. We currently have a temperature of around 72 degrees on the graphics card, so it's not the worst out there, but maybe with a bit of a repaste, it could be a little bit better. I think we're going to die on this bit now because I've not been paying attention to the game, but so far everything is working fine. Something is attacking me. I think it's that thing there. Let's just shoot it till it's dead. So overall, if there's anyone out there that really does want to play Space Marine 1, you can definitely play it on a system like this. You may have to have some kind of headphones because it is getting a little bit loud, but hopefully, like I say, we can fix that with some extra cooling in the system, maybe some thermal paste on the graphics card. We'll definitely check that out at some point, but let's start another game, something a little bit more demanding than this, and see if this system can hold up well with that one. Now the next game we're going to test is Tomb Raider, or Rise of the Tomb Raider. It's not the oldest one, it's not the latest one. It is kind of in the mid-ground of the recent releases, and it's a really good game. So again, if you haven't played it, you should definitely go check it out. Can this system actually play it though? Well, we're not quite sure at the moment. We are sitting here in the menu. It's still heating up a little bit in there. It's getting quite warm. It's getting quite loud. The graphics card is now running at 73 degrees, which still isn't crazy, but the fans are definitely spinning on it. We'll pop over to our options. We'll see what we've currently got configured. Under display, we currently have the game set to a 1920 by 1080, so 1080p. We've got our VSync turned off, so everything is looking good there. We'll pop back over to our graphics settings, and we are currently set at a preset of high. That is pretty much the place where most people are actually going to play this game. So let's see if it can actually perform okay and get some decent 1% lows on this. Now in the game, we are currently getting an average of 44 frames per second with a 1% low of around 42, which means that you get a reasonably smooth gameplay experience. It's pretty much performing like a games console, but with a slightly higher FPS. It doesn't look that amazing, I will admit. It's pretty good. It's not completely out of this world, but I think the game could look better with an ultra setting, but we're clearly not going to be able to get that and still get an 60 FPS experience here. But running around a little bit, we can see that things are going up and down, generally around the 50 FPS mark. More than playable on this system, of course. So you're going to have a reasonably good experience here. This is quite a bit of an open area in the game, so if you're going to get any kind of drops, you're going to get it here. There was a slight little drop on the screen there, but it didn't show on the stats, so you can feel more than it can actually show. The graphics card is currently running at 99% with 60% on the CPU, so that's actually working pretty fine. And the graphics card's now getting a little bit warmer, around 74 degrees. Now I think this is actually pretty impressive of a system like this. This game was released in around 2016, so this system should be able to play it, but I didn't expect it to play it this well. I thought maybe we would have to drop down to a low setting or something just to try and hit that 60 FPS. I suppose now what we'll need to do with the system getting a bit louder is try something that it shouldn't be able to play, something that is very new, very demanding, and hopefully will show us where the limitations are in the system. So the next game in our test is Cyberpunk 2077. This system shouldn't even really be able to play this game. It does not meet the minimum requirements at all, but it is loading up, and it's loading up reasonably fast. With the frame time graph, even in the menu or the loading screen here, is going all over the place. So clearly something in here is it's just too demanding for it, but we'll find out what it is once we get into the game. Once it's loaded, the system I expect to get even louder. It's pretty loud now just in the loading screen, so I think it definitely is that cooler on that fan there, on the CPU cooler, because the graphics card is at 0%. It's not doing anything while it's actually loading up, although the fans are spinning and the graphics card's getting quite hot. Definitely does need to have some work done on that graphics card, but Apart from that, it is working and it is loading up the game. So if you did have the side on this case, you probably could get away with playing it. But we'll just press space now and we'll get into the game. And here we are. The game is completely unplayable. We're currently getting an average of around 12 frames per second and it is stuttering all over the place. It just dropped down to 2 frames per second with a 1% low of 1 FPS. So Cyberpunk 2077 in its current settings is completely unplayable. But let's head over to those settings and see what is configured. For the video settings, we've got a 1080p resolution, and under graphics, we have a preset of high. It's basically just disabled any kind of resolution scaling. It's not using FSR or anything like that. We could try to use FSR, but I think the first thing we'll do is we're going to drop down the graphics to low. That should actually give us a little bit more on there. We'll turn off FSR for now, and then we'll head back into game, see what kind of performance we get with a 1080p low setting. Now with the 1080p low setting, we have increased our averages and everything up by quite a bit, although our frame time graph is pretty much all over the place still. We're currently getting an average of 25 frames per second with a 1% low of 5. That is clearly going to give you a bad experience in this game, and you can really feel it as you turn the character. There's a lot of stuttering here, so I'm kind of thinking we're going to actually have to drop our resolution here. The first thing we'll do though is we're going to head back over to the settings. We're going to see if enabling anything like FSR. So we've got AMD FSR 2.1 available on this, and we're going to set it to a performance setting. Let's just drop everything right down, see if we can actually get this game at least a little bit playable before we drop the resolution. We'll head back into game, reset our stats here. That's actually not really changed much at all. We are getting an average now of 30 frames per second with a 1% low of 7. So again, clearly in 1080p, this game is going to be completely unplayable. I mean, you can move around. We're actually getting around everywhere, but there's big stuttering, particularly when characters are on the screen. And in the lowest setting, you need it to be able to play much better than this, particularly when you've destroyed your graphical quality. Let's head back over to the settings. We'll go to video. We'll change the resolution down. We're going to put it down to 720p. There is a lot of people out there that will still play at 720p, particularly if they've got older systems like this. So can you actually get away with it in Cyberpunk 2077 in a system like this? If you can, then you've pretty much got a console-like experience here. I mean, when this game came out on the console, it was absolutely terrible, and we know that consoles really do upscale, so hopefully we can get at least a PS4 or maybe an Xbox One type experience. Dropping the resolution down to 720p while still having it on a low preset with an FSR quality of performance. The game actually looks shockingly bad. It's probably worse than the console at the moment. And we're currently getting an average of around 42 frames per second with a 1% low of 3. And that is the big problem here with a system like this. The graphics card and well, particularly the CPU is really struggling here to keep the 720 resolution going. And the graphics card is pretty much pegged in any other kind of resolution. So unfortunately, Cyberpunk is not going to be able to provide a decent experience with this system. And that is a little bit of a shame because this game has got better over time, but clearly this system is just not enough. So in a bid to try and calm the system down a little bit and get it a little bit quieter, I've exited the game. Clearly it is not enough to be able to play something like Cyberpunk 2077, but you can get away with all the other games. There are still thousands of games we could play on this system. The Warhammer Space Marine worked beautifully. Anything around that era is going to work perfectly fine, or previous to it. Anything around 2016, so Rise of the Tomb Raider, maybe even Doom 2016, that would probably work okay on this system. It is, though, the worst of the world when it comes to the system. It does have a stock cooler. That CPU gets very hot. The graphics card really does need a repaste. It needs a bit of kind of refurbishment, really, to be able to get to its peak. And of course, we're still running a single stick of DDR4. Increasing some of those things will actually make this system a bit decent. So I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to give this system a bit of an upgrade. That's not going to be in this video, though. I'm going to go away now and start to have a look for some parts, get some things ordered, try to pair that CPU well with a new graphics card maybe, and definitely get some more cooling in here. Overall, the system is pretty nice. It does need a clean, so we're going to do that next time too. So you don't want to miss that. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. And that kind of brings us to the end of a look at our £35 machine. You can buy a machine for £35. It can game, and it games reasonably well if you play games that are more suitable to it. But when it comes to new stuff, it's not really going to cut it, to be honest. But until the next video, I'll catch you guys in the next one.